The civil rights movement in the United States was a crucial period in the struggle for social justice and equality, primarily occurring from the mid-1950s to the late 1960s. This movement aimed to dismantle systemic racism and secure legal rights for African Americans, addressing issues of racial segregation and discrimination that persisted despite constitutional amendments meant to ensure equality. Key events and milestones. Brown v. Board of Education, 1954. This landmark Supreme Court decision declared racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional, overturning the separate but equal doctrine established by Plessy v. Ferguson, 1896, and marking a significant victory for the civil rights movement. Montgomery bus boycott, 1955 to 1956, sparked by Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her bus seat to a white passenger. This boycott led to a year-long protest against segregated seating on public buses in Montgomery, Alabama. It was instrumental in raising awareness and support for civil rights issues across the nation. Formation of key organizations. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, was founded in 1957, with Martin Luther King Jr. as its president, promoting nonviolent resistance as a means to achieve civil rights objectives. Similarly, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, emerged, focusing on grassroots organizing and direct action. Freedom Rides. 1961. Activists rode interstate buses into the segregated southern United States to challenge non-enforcement of Supreme Court rulings that prohibited segregation in bus terminals. These rides faced violent opposition but were pivotal in drawing national attention to civil rights abuses. March on Washington, 1963. This massive rally culminated in Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous "I Have a Dream" speech, advocating for jobs and freedom. The event highlighted the economic inequalities faced by African Americans and was critical in garnering support for civil rights legislation. Civil Rights Act of 1964. This landmark legislation prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It aimed to end segregation in schools, at the workplace, and in public accommodations, representing a significant legislative achievement of the movement. Voting Rights Act of 1965. Following widespread protests against voter suppression tactics in the South, this act aimed to eliminate barriers to voting for African Americans, ensuring their right to participate fully in the democratic process. The civil rights movement not only transformed laws but also significantly shifted public attitudes toward race relations in America. It inspired subsequent movements advocating for various social justice issues, including women's rights and LGBTQ rights. Despite the progress made during this era, challenges remain regarding racial equality and justice today. Through collective action and nonviolent protest strategies, participants of the civil rights movement laid down a foundation for future generations striving for equality and justice across various fronts in American society. Several key events and factors contributed to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, reflecting a culmination of civil rights activism, legislative efforts, and societal pressures. Civil rights movement activism. The early 1960s saw significant activism from civil rights organizations, including the NAACP, SCLC, and SNCC. Protests, sit-ins, and marches highlighted the injustices faced by African Americans, drawing national attention to issues of segregation and discrimination in public spaces and voting rights. Birmingham Campaign, 1963. The violent response to peaceful protests in Birmingham, Alabama, where police used dogs and fire hoses against demonstrators, shocked the nation. Images of this brutality were broadcast widely, increasing public sympathy for the civil rights cause and pressuring political leaders to take action. President John F. Kennedy's advocacy. Following the events in Birmingham, President Kennedy delivered a nationally televised address on June 11, 1963, declaring civil rights a moral issue. He proposed comprehensive civil rights legislation to address segregation in public accommodations and discrimination in employment and education.